What's up, YouTube? My name is Sarabjit Singh. I'm a fourth year medical student, a couple months away from graduating from medical school. And in today's video, I'm going to be discussing how to choose which DO school to go to if you have multiple osteopathic medical school acceptances. And if you're short on time and you don't want to watch the video through, I do have a guide in the description that goes into exact details that I discussed in this video, so you can find that there. But without further ado, let's get into the video. So when it comes to choosing between two DO schools, outside of location, another thing I would look at, one thing that's important to look at is the cost of the school. Now, when it comes to the cost, it really varies across different DO schools. And for example, if you go to medical school in Pikeville, Kentucky, the cost is going to be with a lot different with the tuition and cost of living than if you go to medical school in Chicago, where cost of living is higher. Now, something to keep in mind is that there were recent changes with the Big Beautiful Bill that was signed in 2025 that starting in July 1, 2026, there's a federal cap for professional students that's at $50,000 per year or $200,000 lifetime. So what this means is that outside of those federal cap, students will have to take private loans. And because this is new, this is, right now a lot of people don't really know how to navigate about this, but this is something to keep in mind. And if there are huge cost differences between two DO schools, I would definitely consider that into playing a role. Now, outside of cost and location, the next factor that I would look at is the COMLEX board pass rate for COMLEX Level 1 and COMLEX Level 2. Now, in 2022, COMLEX Level 1, which is a board exam you take after your second year medical school, went to pass-fail. Now, after those changes of the board exam going pass-fail, the general trend was that in the first couple of years after pass-fail changes, there was a lot of the pass rate had gone low. A lot of students, the pass rate had gone low. A lot of students were failing those exams. But what you want to look at is actually the last 2 years. You want to essentially look at is that has there been an uptrend in the board pass rates at the schools that you have been accepted into, and also keep in mind this applies to also COMLEX Level 2, which is the board exam you take after your third year medical school. Now, COMLEX Level 2 is a scored board exam. You do get a numerical number that will affect which residency programs you apply to and get into. Now, along with the COMLEX pass rates for COMLEX Level 1 and 2, and especially the recent trend in the last couple of years, something that is important is that it's referred to as COMSATs. So COMSATs are practice exams that you have to take before you take COMLEX Level 1 and 2, and a lot of osteopathic medical schools have their own cutoffs of minimum scores that they want to make sure you hit on those practice exams before you can sit for COMLEX. So a lot of times, if you don't meet the school's minimum cutoff, the school won't let you take COMLEX Level 1 or 2, which means that you end up having to delay when you can take the exam. So you want to look at the minimum cutoff. So my school, the minimum cutoff is 450, which is 50 points above passing. Passing is 400 for Level 1 and 2. And also you want to look at, so what are the internal policies that if you don't hit those minimum cutoffs for the scores? For example, my school, if you don't hit the 450, which happened to me, you delay starting your third year of medical school. You delay rotations until you can hit the 450 and take COMLEX. But with my school, is very flexible. You can actually delay multiple rotations and start third year later and still graduate on time. Other schools have higher minimum COMSAT requirements. Other schools are also more stricter, where if you don't hit those scores on multiple attempts, they make you take remediation programs. And if you don't pass COMLEX by a certain date, or if you fail COMLEX a certain amount of times, you get dismissed from the school. So that is something, those are important things to look at. And this information is the way you will find out this information. Your best bet will be either to reach out to a medical student at the school through LinkedIn or social media, or what you want to do is you want to look up the student handbook for the school. So I would search up KaiCom student handbook, download the handbook, drop it into ChatGPT, and then have ChatGPT be like, hey, within this handbook in the PDF, find the CompStat minimum scores required to sit for COMLEX level 1, find their policies if you fail COMLEX, and that's a way for you to shift through all the information that you might find in this PDFs to look for what you need and the answers you're looking for. Now, outside of COMLEX recent pass rate trends, CompStat scores, the next factor that's important to consider is going to be your third year clinical rotations. So a lot of, you want to see the DO school you have been accepted into, what hospital affiliations they have, what are the quality of those affiliations. So a lot of times DO schools tend to be in smaller cities where there'll be a hospital regionally that some of the medical students will rotate at that hospital, but then with the larger class size of the students at the schools will tend to split up students and send them to various different clinical rotation sites in the state or out of state. For example, my school, during our second year medical school, we had to actually apply for 30 clinical rotation sites, and then based on what rotation site we got accepted into, that's the rotation site we went to. So it was very variable in terms of you could have like 4 students that are going to be rotating in Hazard, Kentucky, 10 students in Bowling Green, Kentucky, you have 6 students rotating here, and so forth. And with these rotation sites, the question you want to ask is that, what hospitals they're affiliated with, how do students get split up, what is the process like, how do you get different rotation sites. Also, you want to see, is the training at the different rotation sites, is it the same or is it variable? For example, at my school, some rotation sites you got great inpatient experience, which is very important, and some rotation sites you actually were strictly just outpatient. You have very limited inpatient exposure. So that is, third year clinical rotation is very important in the training you will get in terms of preparing you for fourth year for your audition rotations and residency. So this is a very important factor, and this is something that you want to inquire about to make sure that your school has strong hospital affiliations. Now, the next factor would be looking at research opportunities. Now, with COMLEX level 1 being pass-fail, and COMLEX level 2 is honestly the only numerical number now that helps you stand out and be competitive, research has become more important to help you become stand out and be a more competitive candidate for residencies. And this is especially more important for anyone who wants to go into a competitive specialty. So if you're going into medical school and you already have your mindset on orthopedic surgery, dermatology, or general surgery, or any of these specialties that are more competitive and are outside of primary care, then you really want to make sure that the school you go to has enough research opportunities. You want to see, is there a research department? What the faculty who are currently teaching at the school, what research are those faculty members engaged in? Is there a summer research program? Are the students presenting and have publications where they're presenting the posters at? These are all things to consider to see the research infrastructure that exists at the DO school. And the next factor outside of research and other things we talked about, next factor will be the match data. Now, when you look at the overall match rate, most DO schools are going to have 95 to 100% match rate, which is amazing, but the numbers alone don't tell you the whole story. you want to actually dig deeper and see the quality of the programs that people are matching into and what specialties, right? So if you look at the match rate, most people from DO schools are matching into, internal medicine, emergency medicine, family medicine, pediatrics, and psychiatry. But even with those specialties, you want to look at the quality in terms of the residencies they're matching into, the competitive nature of those residencies, and where are those residencies located, the regional location. And this is important because, for example, when it comes to internal medicine residency programs, like I'm applying internal medicine, we have academic internal medicine programs which are very competitive because most people at those academic internal medicine programs, these tend to be research focused, university affiliated, and they have a lot of fellowship pathways. So a lot of people can easily get into fellowships from those programs. These tend to be competitive. Then you have community programs with academic affiliation, where that's where a lot of DO students end up. And then you have community internal medicine programs. Now, all these programs will give you good training, but they do affect your opportunities down the road in terms of if you want to do a fellowship, in terms of if you want to go into cardiology, nephrology, pulmonary care after internal medicine. So these are important factors to kind of look at, okay, what are the strengths of the programs people are matching into? And also, when it comes to location, a lot of DO schools tend to match regionally in terms of there are certain residency programs that are familiar with students from the DO school, and they're more inclined to take those students. So we want to see the geographic distribution of the people who are matching from that DO school to just kind of get a gauge of. And this data should be found on the school's website, or you should be published online somewhere that you can look into. Now, some of the other factors that you can look at are going to be, there's a lot of other factors that they're included in my guide. I would just recommend that you check out this guide on Notion that I created that's more in depth, that has a lot of other factors you should also look into. But lastly, I want to say, the culture of the program, the culture at the school is important as well in terms of, for example, in my school, the culture was amazing. Everyone was very collaborative, and even though we were in a smaller city, Pikeville, Kentucky, everyone came from all across the U.S. to the small town, and we were just so close, tight-knit group, and I had a great medical school experience, and probably some of the best years of my life because of the people at this medical school. So the culture definitely plays a big role, and the diversity, if that's something that's important to you, you want to look at that as well. But lastly, I want to just end this by saying that, you got accepted into medical school. This is a huge accomplishment. This is something you should be absolutely proud of. And regardless of what medical school you go into, it just comes down to what you make out of it. It really comes down to your hard work and dedication, your willingness to take initiative. Even if there's not research opportunities at the school, you can start research projects. Faculty members are going to be very happy to help you if you're someone who's ambitious and is willing to take that initiative. And the connections you're willing to form, and how much you're willing to go outside the box to make things happen. And even if the certain DO school hasn't matched certain specialties in a recent year or as strongly, doesn't mean you can't be the first one to match. So you can make it happen regardless of what school you go into, and it's all about making the most out of the opportunity you're given in life. And you should be absolutely proud of yourself. Congratulations on your acceptance, and I wish you all the best, and I know you'll be a great physician. If you find this video helpful, if there's any factors that I missed out you want to add, make sure you comment below. Thank you for watching.